The town hall. What an essential part of the community. Full of people working on our behalf, a place where we can go at any time with our problems. The place to contact if we have to make an occasional complaint.
Town hall, can I help you? I want to make a complaint.
Certainly, madam. What about?
I said that I wanted.
To make a complaint.
Yes, I realize that you want to make a complaint.
But I'd like to make sure that you're put in touch with the correct department.
I don't think you understand.
This is Mrs. Mary Higgins of 40 Park Road.
Oh, Mrs. Higgins. We haven't heard from you for a month. That is because I've been on holiday for a month. I think it's time that I paid a visit to the town hall.
So I'm calling to say that I'll arrive in 10 minutes' time. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins is back from her holiday.
And she wants to make a complaint, I suppose.
She'll be here in 10 minutes, I'm afraid. I'd better ring the housing department. Thank you. Housing department, can I help you?
Oh, hello. It's Jill in reception.
I've just had a call from Mrs. Higgins.
Mrs. Higgins? Oh, no. I'm sure that she wants another department.
Maybe, but you must admit that she always starts with your department.
I know she always starts with the housing department.
But whatever she's complaining about this time, it can't possibly concern us. It must be another department.
Well, I'm afraid that Mrs. Higgins is already on her way to the town hall.
Never mind. I'll get the planning department to deal with her.
Planning department, can I help you?
I hope you can. It's Mrs. Higgins.
Ah, Mrs. Higgins. I was just thinking that we hadn't heard from you for a long time.
This is not Mrs. Higgins. It's Linda in the housing department. And I'm just warning you that Mrs. Higgins will be here in a moment.
Then you'll be dealing with her, I imagine. She always starts with the housing department.
Not this time, I assure you. We've dealt with all her complaints to us.
That's funny. We've dealt with all her complaints to us, too, I'm absolutely certain. Perhaps we should try the other departments.
Perhaps we should try the town clerk.
If all the departments claim they have already dealt with Mrs. Higgins's complaints, then I shall see her. Fetch me the files on Mrs. Higgins. Come in.
I see that you're all working hard today.
How do you do, Mrs. Higgins? Yes. Do sit down.
Thank you.
Now, I gather that you wish to make a complaint. I thought it would be a good idea if we went through your problems one by one, since you seem to have so many. I promise you they will be dealt with quickly and efficiently. Now, let's see. Where shall we begin? The housing department?
Yes, I usually begin with the housing department.
I think they're talking about the tree now.
I've no need to remind you that we had a lot of trouble with that tree.
Ah, yes. Yes, the tree. Yes, here we are. It was agreed that the tree should be removed. And here it is confirmed that it was removed on the 23rd of April.
You don't imagine that was the end of the matter, do you?
I confess I was hoping to go on to your next problem. There was only one tree to be removed, I believe.
Oh, yes. But when the tree was cut down, there was a hole in the pavement. It was a very big hole, I assure you.
I remember. There was some trouble about a hole in the pavement. And I hope you won't have any more cause to complain about noise from your neighbors.
I admit it's fairly quiet now they've moved out, but
I expect you're going to remind me about the windows they broke before they left.
5 windows. There were 5 broken windows, remember?
That is the last of your little problems, I trust, Mrs. Higgins. You must admit that the council has done everything in its power to help you. And I can assure you that it will continue to do so. We want to keep you happy, you know.
But I came here to complain about the bus stop.
Oh, Mrs. Higgins, please, have you forgotten that we moved the bus stop away from your house because you complained about the noise?
No, I have not forgotten. But now I have to walk to catch the bus. And I wish to complain.
My staff will deal with that, madam. Excuse me.
Here are some examples of dependent statements.
I want to make a complaint. I realize that you want to make a complaint. I said that I wanted to make a complaint.
I'm sure that she wants another department.
You must admit that she always starts with the housing department.
I gather that you wish to make a complaint.
I've no need to remind you that we had a lot of trouble with that tree.
It was agreed that the tree should be removed.
I feel it's time I paid a visit to the town hall.
I know she always starts with the housing department.
Can I help you?
I hope you can.
She wants to make a complaint, I suppose.
She'll be here in 10 minutes, I'm afraid.
You'll be dealing with her, I imagine.
There was only one tree to be removed, I believe. That is the last of your little problems, I trust.
And now, back to the town hall.
You don't look very happy this morning, Jill, I must say.
I didn't sleep last night, I'm afraid. It's the flat I live in. I can't bear it. Noisy neighbors, aeroplanes flying just above the roof. There's a road being built outside and a terrible smell from the factory next door. Our Mrs. Higgins would find enough to complain about for several years.
Careful. Mrs. Higgins is on her way here now.
Oh, no. She'll be coming to complain, I've no doubt.
Don't forget what the town clerk told us. We must all do what we can to help Mrs. Higgins.
Good morning. Oh, good morning, Mrs. Higgins. I expect you've come to complain about... Complain? I've no complaints. I've just come to make an application. I want to install something in my flat. I'm sure you want the housing department, then. I expect I do.
What is it you want to install in your flat, Mrs. Higgins?
Air conditioners. I want the air in my flat to be fresh. All the time. I don't suppose you'll allow me to put them in.
Oh, I don't think there will be any objection. Not from the housing department, at any rate. If you come with me, I'll just check. Now, let me see. Adding machines, aeroplanes, air. Here we are. I can assure you that the housing department does not object to air, conditioned or not.
You really mean there's no objection at all?
The regulations confirm that you can have any sort of air you like in your flat. But the equipment's a different matter. You may need planning permission, you know.
Mrs. Higgins?
I'm sure Mr. Bright of our planning department will help you.
I'd be delighted to help you, Mrs. Higgins. Come this way, please. Now, let me see. Planning permission.
Tell me, why do you need that enormous chart?
This chart is to make sure that we ask you the right questions and that you give us the right answers. Now, Mrs. Higgins, do you own the flat you live in, or does it belong to the council?
It belongs to the council. You know that. Why do you need to ask?
Well, you see, Mrs. Higgins, I can't ask any question until I have the answer to the one before.
How many questions are there?
Oh, hundreds, Mrs. Higgins, hundreds. And they all have to be answered, I'm afraid. But don't worry. I'll give you all the help I can. Really? Oh, good. Thank you. Goodbye. Right, Mrs. Higgins. We've now established that none of the other departments of the council object to your air conditioners. The next question is, does the planning department object?
And does it?
Of course not.
Hard at work, I see. Mrs. Higgins is with the planning department. She's been there for 2 hours.
Mrs. Higgins, oh dear.
Here she comes now.
I hope my staff have been looking after you.
Yes. I must confess that they've done everything they can to help me.
You don't look very happy.
I never thought they'd allow me to install air conditioning in my flat. You don't think they could still find some objections, do you?
I doubt it.
Then I can't complain about their objections. And I like complaining. Now there's nothing to complain about. And my flat will be even better with the air conditioning.
Excuse me, madam. I've got a suggestion. Why don't you change flats with Miss Reed here? Her flat would give you plenty to complain about.
Yes, it's terrible. Right. Let's go and see the housing department immediately.